Hey, it's Chuck Dixon here. Talk to you about how this project came about. The Expendables Go To Hell. Um, well, it all began when I did a mini series of the Expendables for Dynamite, and this was a prequel to the first Expendables movie. And the movie wouldn't be out for months, so obviously I couldn't see it. They did send some images, and I was working off of the screenplay written by Sylvester Stallone, so that I could you know, understand the characters and, get into the whole franchise. And so I'm working off of this screenplay. And as much as I liked the first movie, I like the screenplay better. It established this patois between the characters, this shorthand, this way of speaking that guys who spend a lot of time together in adverse situations, do develop. This shorthand, and they had their own special phrasing and their own in jokes and everything else, and it just all flowed so seamlessly. I just love the dialogue that Sly wrote. By the way, he insists that I call him Sly. So I love what he wrote, and I build off of that. Now, when as so often happens between the screenplay and actually filming the movie, changes had to be made. Sly had a dream cast in mind, and he didn't get to cast the characters exactly the way that he envisioned, so that the dialogue that he had written with certain actors in mind had to be changed as the filming process went on. Often had to be changed on set, while they're filming. And anybody who knows Sly has told me the same thing, that this guy's a wizard on set at solving problems. A problem comes up when they're filming, and he always seems to have an answer or a different way to go about it, or a shortcut or a workaround. So what I read in the screenplay was quite a bit different from what appeared in the comic. Well, I write the thing and I'm happy with it, and it goes out and apparently does okay. And months go by and I get a phone call. And the phone call is a woman, and she very politely asks if I would accept a phone call from Sylvester Stallone. Well, yeah, okay. So Sly gets on the phone, and it's obviously him. It's not one of my friends doing a voice. And he tells me that he liked the comic. He liked how I got the characters, how I got the dialogue, I got the relationships between them. He liked how I built action. He just generally liked the comic. And I didn't realize that he was a comics fan. I certainly didn't realize he'd ever seen the comic that I wrote. So he asked me if I would be interested in helping him out on Expendables 2. He's not happy with the screenplay as it stands. He'd like some changes made, and he'd like to know if I'd like to come in with him and suggest changes to be made to the script. Talk about it, bounce things off one another. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds like a great, you know, very flattered. Okay. It's funny because at the time in my office, I had a one sheet poster from Judge Dredd hanging on my wall. So I'm looking at this 3 foot face of Stallone, just past my monitor as I'm talking to it. Anyway, I agree, and he sets up a production meeting with the producers of the Expendables movies. And they fly me out to Hollywood and put me up at a hotel, and I go into the meeting. Now, I didn't understand anything about production meetings at this time. I'd been in conference calls, and I'd never been to an actual live production meeting. And my experiences in Hollywood never really went very well, and there's a reason for that. Since then, I've learned by talking to screenwriters and directors and reading a bit on my own that every production meeting basically goes the same way. Everybody sort of meets and greets. How's the weather where you live? How are the kids? Talk about something in the news. Real casual, and everybody's friendly, and it's just sort of like, hey, we're just sitting around shooting the shit. And all of a sudden, one of the producers will turn to the writer, in this case me, and they'll say, "So what's the story? What are your ideas?" And it's like a tiger leaping out of a tree onto a helpless deer. You're going from chit chat to, "Oh my God, I'm on the spot." So I make my pitch. and Sly's putting in his 2 cents as I'm talking, because we had talked all this out. You know, some of the variations we'd like to see in the screenplay, in the story. And it all seems very friendly. And, and they have a few suggestions of their own. And stupidly, I sort of counter their suggestions. I come back with my own ideas instead. What I've learned since then is in a production meeting, you just agree with the producer. Whatever they come up with, you just say, that's a great idea. Why didn't I think of that? That's brilliant. You're a genius, sir. But I didn't do that. I got into a give and take. And I mistakenly thought this is still a friendly conversation. And they were very friendly and they were very gracious. And then the subject turns to casting, which I've learned in a production meeting means the meeting's almost over. So they play their little game of who would play what. And there's a bunch of movie posters all around the room, and Sly is pointing at them and saying, I'd like to get that guy and that guy and that guy. And the producers are telling him, you know, how possible or impossible that would be to accomplish. And and then um, and then the meeting's over and we all part company and we shake hands and they want my contact information and they want to talk to me later after they talk to my agent. And the meeting's over and I think everything went well. I'm an idiot. Nothing went well. I should not have disagreed with them. So, but anyway, I think there's a deal going forward, and I got to get an agent. And a good friend that I know in the film business suggests a guy, and I go to see that guy, and he's very, very excited because basically I've done all the work for him. Stallone reached out for me. The deal is made in his mind. Now all he has to do is ask for the money that he's going to take a percentage of. So it all looks wonderful, and of course you know, he just wants to be in the Chuck Dixon business, which you know I already knew was a warning bell. Um, so he asked for the moon, the sun, and the stars, and they counter with the lowest lowball offer you could imagine. It was basically the same amount I would be making if I were writing comic books. And I'm like, no, this isn't movie money. This isn't scale. This isn't any good. And I turned the deal down. And the reason why they lowballed me is they didn't want me touching the screenplay they'd already paid a lot of money for. I understand that. So everything's cool. So, you know, my dreams of being a big time screenwriter are dashed. But what made it, you know, good was I got to meet Sylvester Stallone. I got to talk to him. And that wasn't the end of it. Sly kept, you know, he kept in contact. And he got me some work writing some web content for Lionsgate. He would call me every once in a while, you know, sometimes just to shoot the shit. Um, and you know, I mean, you know, we didn't become best friends or anything like that. But you know, every once in a while I get a call from him, so it became kind of a habit. And every time an Expendables movie was in production, he would call and bounce ideas off me. He wanted somebody, I think, who wasn't in the business that he could talk to, who understood what he wanted, you know, who shared his vision, as it were. And you know, I enjoyed those talks. I didn't make a dime off them, but I didn't care. You know, I was just talking to a guy about what he wanted to do. And of course, you know, none of the ideas that I ever came up with, or in most cases he ever came up with, ever made it onto the screen. Um, but that's the way things go. Well, in the middle of one of these conversations, we were dealing with his company, his new company, Balboa Productions, optioned my Levon Cade novels for a TV series. And in the middle of talking to him about that, the discussion of various rights came up and what rights would I want to surrender. And I really only would surrender the movie and TV rights. I wasn't going to surrender, obviously, publication. I wasn't going to surrender graphic novel rights. And I believe that was about the time I asked Sly, hey, who has the comic book rights to the Expendables? And he told me that he did. And I said, well, would you be interested in doing more comics? And he said, yeah, he would, as long as I worked them, as long as I wrote them. Very flattering, very nice. And I said, well, let me see what I can set up. I tried to set something up at one of the indie companies, and the stars did not align, and it just didn't happen. So a few months later, or maybe almost a year later, I thought, you know, Richard Meyer is like the biggest Expendables fan I've ever met in my life. This guy loves the Expendables. I mean, I think he can, you know, quote most of the dialogue to you. And I thought, well, why not do it as a crowdfunder? And Richard certainly has a track record of successful crowdfunders, and he would certainly be earnestly interested in helping to produce something like this. And Sly had mentioned in passing in one of our conversations that he had a crazy idea for an Expendables movie that he knew could never get greenlit. It was the Expendables Go to Hell. And why don't I just start the reel here? Um, he comes up with this crazy idea: Expendables Go to Hell. They literally die and go to the afterlife, and they're down there with the damned, and they're fighting in a war. And there's only two sides in hell. It's you're either for Satan or you're against him, and they take the side of the angels and lead. They either lead or fight alongside, you know, an army of the damned against Satan. And I, that was the gist of his basic idea. And I'm like, whoa, holy crap, that would make a great comic book. I mean, that is, I can see why no one would make that as a movie because it's nuts, but it's just nuts enough for a comic book series. So, with his permission, I contacted Richard. I told him about Richard and Richard's background, and he was impressed. And he said, "Yeah, talk to the guy." So I got a hold of Richard and I got him on the phone, and I said, "I want you to sit down before I tell you this." And he's laughing, and I'm like, "No, literally sit down because this is big stuff." And so he said, "Okay." So he sits down, and I tell him the idea. Would you want to do a comic book plotted by me and Sylvester Stallone called The Expendables Go to Hell? Well, of course, he's all over it. He's so all over it that by the end of the week, we're working on it. I mean, I'm writing pages, and I think Graham Nolan did some art, and we're picking artists and everything else. And I already knew the general story that I wanted to do, but talking back and forth with Richard, he came up with this idea about the young expendable who died in the second film. And of course, Sly, Barney Ross would run into this character in hell and, reignite the guilt that he felt when he was alive. It's like, basically, I'm the reason you came here so young. And, and Richard said that would make a great spine for the story. And it is. It's this great emotional through line for the whole story and really provides the heart. So I wrote the main story that's being drawn by Graham Nolan, and Richard wrote some like what we're calling tangent stories. That as the Expendables get separated in hell, they have these separate adventures. And then there's another one where Gunner gets separated from the others and has an adventure with some Valkyries, and he meets all of the major villains that are serving as Satan's generals. And that story is going to be drawn by Butch Geist. So, um, you know, so that's where we were, that's where we went. And the thing is moving along faster than any comic project I've ever worked on. And Richard made the decision early on that we would get the bulk of it done before we would announce the crowdfunder. And we have, most of the, almost 100-page volume is complete. And, because we wanted ready delivery. We didn't want this to be one of these crowdfunders where you pony up your money and you wait forever. This is basically going to be like if you ordered the comic at your local comic book shop, you're going to see it in your hands in that amount of time. So, anyway, this is exciting. I'm excited. Richard's excited. Sly is over the moon about it. He's loving everything that we're doing here, and hopefully, with your help, uh, as contributors, this will be a huge success, and we can continue on because we would like to keep doing these, till the wheels come off. So that's about it from me. That's how this came to be, how this crazy project came together with, a major international movie icon and us bunch of lowly comic guys, coming together to do this completely nutso idea. So that, if you like it, head on over to Indiegogo. We got about 27 days left in the campaign, and we'd really like you to come on board. There's going to be a ton of stretch goals. There's going to be a ton of tchotchkes and all kinds of extras coming your way. some exciting new offers, some exciting new pitches for you as the campaign goes on, and more updates, more and more art. This is going to be a major historical comic event, in my opinion. It's a fun ride. It's a fun read. And if you like the Expendables and you like, completely nutso gonzo action comics, this is the one for you. All right, that's it for me. See you down the road. This is Chuck Dixon out.